Okay, we'll start with this. Well, next month on the 17th, apparently, former champion Femke Hermans is going to be taking on Elaine Sikmashvili, Chinese woman Elaine Sikmashvili, for what's supposed to be, get this, the WBA title. And it doesn't say the WBA interim title, it says the WBA title. Looks like this is supposed to be for the full title. The last time that Femke Hermans was in action, she was in action in the middleweight division.
So I'm going to assume that this is a middleweight contest.
Last time that Femke Hermans was in action was in December of last year against Luisa Davidova. She's going to be fighting Elaine Sikmashvili. Elaine Sikmashvili, who has a professional record of 9 wins and 9 losses. She's 1 loss away from having an upside-down record. Elaine Sikmashvili has lost to every solid fighter that she's ever faced. And she's faced some very solid fighters. Christina Hammer, Aline Sina Ruse, Jennifer Hretzke, Emma Kozin, Nikki Adler, Maria Lindberg, and even Femke Hermans. That's right.
What?
This upcoming fight between Femke and Elina is a rematch of their
sequel.
Initial meeting in October of 2016 when Elina Sikmashvili was stopped in 2 rounds by Femke Hermans. Many years later, they're meeting once again, and this time, it's supposed to be for the WBA title, and I believe that that will be the middleweight version of the title. Could be wrong, but we'll see. And you know the reason for this. If the title has suddenly become vacant in the middleweight division, it might be because it's been about 2 years since Clarissa Shields fought as a middleweight. It's been roughly 2 years since she campaigned in the 160-pound division. Clarissa Shields, who was this division's undisputed champion.
For a while.
So after becoming this division's undisputed champion, she did not defend the undisputed crown. Her very next fight took place in the junior middleweight division. Clarissa hasn't campaigned as a middleweight in some time, and 2 years later, it seems that the powers that be might be putting those belts back out there in circulation so that other girls get the chance to win them, since Clarissa is off doing the MMA thing. Once again, I'm not completely sure if this version of the WBA title is for the middleweight division or the junior middleweight division. A trip to the WBA's ranked standings in the junior middleweight division reveals that Clarissa is no longer in possession of the 154-pound version of the title. The discrepancy, however, is that neither Femke Hermans' name or Elaine Sikmashvili's names appear in their top 10 ranked standings.
Not at 154.
Femke Hermans' name, however, does appear in the number 1 spot at 160 pounds. But at 160 pounds, Clarissa Shields is still registered as the WBA's middleweight champion. So your guess is as good as mine as far as which version of the WBA title at what weight are these 2 girls fighting for. We'll find out in July.
And we'll take it from there.
Something big and makes sense. Yeah, see, we only doing, just doing stuff just to be doing it, it don't make sense. You got to do something that has implications on something, you know, something that's worthy.
We've been kind of shocked the boxing world if he actually called out Taylor at this point. If, you know, getting the win over Barry.
Okay, well, let me clear that up. Okay, Taylor just fought an undisputed junior welterweight championship, right? It's 1,000 people in attendance. In the United States. What does it mean? We're going to fill up an arena anyway. We're going to get all of that. Trust and believe, we're going to get all of that. We're going to get every bit of that. Every bit of that. But I'm just saying, it's like, you know, at the end of the day, all these guys are good fighters, but you got to be able to bring something to the dance. Because it does take two to tangle. You can't just say, "Oh, I just want to fight the champ. I want to fight the top dog out there. I want to get paid." Because guess what? Anybody step up in there with Mario Barrios is making the most he's ever made. Okay, and that goes for any fighter that he fights. That's what happens when you fight in the cash cow.
You got to bring something to match up that PPV step.
Well, you got to be able to bring something to the dance. You got to be other than just saying that. And by no means, I want to be clear. Am I trying to downplay this guy? He's the undisputed at that. I'm saying is that it's a reason why they put him in a small venue that it's 1,000 people there. They sold 1,000 tickets.
How many tickets has Mario Barrios sold?
How many, Lenny?
How many fights has he headlined?
How many?
How many belts is he in possession of? It's so easy, so fucking easy to pick apart Leonard Ellerby's arguments that it's not even worth the time. It's not even worth the effort.
It's not.
But this video was sent to me because somebody wants my opinion on it.
They wanted to know what I think.
And if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, this is the exact same argument Leonard Ellerbe made about a year, maybe 2 years ago, in reference to the Tevin Farmer
So
fight.
you said a few times now that your goal is to make Gervonta Davis the biggest star in the sport. So
That's Floyd's objective and my objective.
So your objective
and star power has nothing to do. See, people get the two mixed up. You know, you can be the best fighter. You can be the best fighter, but you can be the biggest star.
So you have no intentions on proving that Gervonta Davis may be the best fighter. You more want him to be the biggest star because, for instance, you guys don't like to acknowledge Tevin Farmer.
To answer your question, I think you kind of got that confused.
I'm just trying to figure it out because we know Tevin and Gervonta say they want to fight each other, but you're basically
But
saying
fighters,
only
that's what
focus
fighters do. That's what fighters do.
Right.
That's what fighters do.
So you guys.
What does Tevin Farmer bring it to the table?
He's bringing a lot. I mean, he's an excellent good fighter. The people want to see it.
What people?
This is eerily similar to the argument that Leonard made in reference to a potential Teofimo Lopez versus Gervonta Davis fight.
Ryan Garcia is a bigger attraction than he is, and that's a fact.
I know you're the man that really has a big final say in that. Is that fight going to be next, Leonard?
Well, again, the best way to not get a fight done is to talk about it. See, the difference between Mayweather Promotions, how we operate, unlike a lot of other promoters, they talk about this, the stuff to the fans and to the media. We just do what we need to do and make things happen. So when the right time to announce Tank's next fight, we'll do that.
And this is the argument you're going to hear Leonard make whenever someone suggests that Gervonta should fight someone with a pulse. Someone who stands a halfway decent chance of not just giving him a fight, but beating him. This is what Leonard is going to say. This is what he is going to resort to. He'll say things like, you got to bring something to the table.
Okay, Taylor just fought an undisputed junior welterweight championship, right? It's 1,000 people in attendance. Well, you got to be able to bring something to the dance.
So you guys.
What does Tevin Farmer bring it to the table? Well, you got to be able to bring something to the dance.
But what is Mario Barrios bringing to the table that Josh Taylor is not? Bear in mind, I'm not holding my breath for Gervonta Tank Davis to fight Josh Taylor. I know that's not going to happen.
And so do you.
Look, if I'm being honest, about 95 to 99% of the time that Gervonta Davis is fighting, I'm not paying attention. I don't care.
I don't watch.
I didn't buy the Leo Santa Cruz fight, and I'm not buying this weekend's fight.
I don't care if you are, because I'm not.
I don't care if Gervonta Davis goes in there with this unheralded opponent and knocks his head clean off his shoulders, because in the greater scheme of things, what does it really mean? Mario Barrios hasn't established himself as any kind of a force in the junior welterweight division. He really hasn't. And that's not a knock on him.
It's not.
Seems like a solid kid, solid fighter, unbeaten.
All right.
To be honest, it's not even really a bad fight, but it's not the kind of fight that should be
Pay-per-view.
put behind a paywall.
It's a decent fight.
But I mean, we're supposed to come out of pocket every time Gervonta Davis fights a halfway decent fighter, which really isn't all that often if you think about it.
It isn't.
Listen, I'm not hung up on the career of Gervonta Davis. Put simply, I don't care. There are other fights, better fights, much better fights, with much better fighters than Gervonta Davis or Mario Barrios happening at or around these weights.
Vasily Lomachenko's fighting Masayoshi Nakatani this weekend.
At no additional cost to me. Before that, Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez, 2 unbeaten champions at 140 pounds, they locked horns, and that was at no additional cost to me. And so long as there are other people out there interested in establishing themselves as the best in show by fighting the best, who gives a flying fuck about Gervonta Davis or Leonard Ellerbe?
Not me.
This has been going on for years now. It's been going on for years with Tevin Farmer. It's been going on for years with Vasily Lomachenko. It's been going on for years with most everybody at 135 pounds right now. And it's still going on. And it's going to keep going on because this kid ain't the real thing. He is only as successful as the matchmaker's creativity.
His imagination.
The matchmaker's ability to find alternatives. Alternatives to the major players at a given weight. Gervonta Davis hasn't actually racked up a solid win. I mean, a real solid win since the Jose Pedraza fight. And that was, 4 years ago?
Jesus.
I mean, that's the last really solid fighter that he fought.
Kid's a hype job, man.
It's all smoke and mirrors. He's not the real thing. If he were, they wouldn't have to be this careful with him.
Can't you see?
Because tanks don't need that much protection.
He's not a tank. He's a Jeep.
Finally, now for the other arm of a conversation piece we had in my previous video, Anthony Joshua's comments. I'm an elite level fighter, not one of the tomato cans he's knocked out. You better watch what he's saying because when the day comes for me and him, I know what I'm capable of. He ain't an elite level fighter. This set of comments from Anthony Joshua has sparked a lot of conversation. Conversation we've actually had here on the channel that we're going to revisit. Is Deontay Wilder an elite level fighter?
Is he?
Does he have any elite level characteristics, any elite level properties? I mean, this is a fighter who quite famously said, when you've got power like me, you don't need skill. I'll be honest that I've never heard a fighter say that. Boxing is often referred to as the sweet science. And for a fighter to say something like that, you don't need skill. In a sport that's often referred to as the sweet science, it seems that Deontay Wilder didn't bring a beaker or a lab coat. Not saying stuff like that, he didn't. I mean, Deontay Wilder was an Olympian. An Olympic bronze medalist. And that's saying a lot because you got to beat a couple of people to get to that point where you can medal. Medal at all. Make no mistake, it's not a small achievement. But somewhere between the time that Deontay Wilder medaled in the Olympics and he decided to go pro, something changed.
And not for the better.
I think that in the case of Deontay Wilder,
Like we see in the case of Gervonta Davis.
something went wrong. The development of the fighter was stifled by soft matchmaking. You heard that right. Soft matchmaking. If iron sharpens iron, what do you think 7 years worth of lighter touches, filler fights, journeyman, what do you think 7 years does to a fighter's development?
Stifles it.
In a sport where iron sharpens iron, what do you think happens? You know, we often talk about how Deontay Wilder was around for both of the Klitschko brothers, both Vitaly and Vladimir, yet he never fought either of them. It's strange that while the entire division was busy fighting each other, mixing it up, Deontay Wilder was somewhere out there, far out there, on the outskirts.
Fighting fringe fighters.
We often talk about that. But, you know, Deontay Wilder's protection program really wasn't exclusive to keeping him away from the Klitschko brothers. There are other fights where Deontay Wilder's career might have met an untimely end. I think back to what could have been in the Alexander Povetkin fight. You know, most people don't remember that Al Heyman lost that purse bid. Ryabinski won the purse bid, and Deontay Wilder was going to have to board a plane over to Mother Russia to defend his title against his mandatory challenger, his then mandatory challenger, Alexander Povetkin. I think about the kind of fighter that Povetkin was. This is a younger Povetkin than the one that Dillian White just fought. A younger Povetkin even than the one that Anthony Joshua fought, who was still a formidable version of Povetkin, but an older one. Think about the version of Povetkin that Deontay Wilder would have had to have fought, and I think Wilder would have lost that fight. He doesn't have the fundamentals to beat someone like Povetkin. He just doesn't have it. A smaller fighter with a lower center of gravity who knows how to stay off the line, an explosive fighter with explosive power, an ambush fighter. Deontay Wilder has no inside game, not based on the sweet science.
Ain't got it.
If you're going to use Deontay Wilder's fight with Tyson Fury as a point of reference, What that fight might have shown us, assuming it wasn't all scripted, assuming this isn't all some
Pantomime.
scripted melodrama, what that fight showed us, if it showed us anything, is that Deontay Wilder has no inside game. If you crowd him, given his height, his length, his build, it's a very awkward place for him when a fighter is crowding him, mid-range to inside. Deontay Wilder might generate devastating power, and his power might be the only elite-level quality he possesses, because looking at him over the years, he doesn't seem to have the best gas tank for a fighter.
Not for somebody as thin as he is.
That brings me back to the things that Mark Breland said about Deontay Wilder and what he does and doesn't do in preparation for a fight, that aesthetically he might have a very athletic build, but as far as implementation goes, he isn't the most prolific puncher, doesn't have the biggest, best work rate out there. What he has is a sizable punch, and that's what he's been relying on for over 10 years and 40 fights. I think about what could have happened in the Povetkin fight, and I understand that Povetkin blew it. Povetkin fucked it up for himself, testing positive for meldonium. I haven't changed my stance on that. However, I will say that had the fight gone through, I think Povetkin might have beat Deontay Wilder, and we would have never got here. I think that in Povetkin testing positive for meldonium, Deontay Wilder effectively dodged a bullet because he doesn't have the fundamentals for a fighter like that. He doesn't have the fundamentals for a lot of fighters, and that's why I think he was kept away from so many fighters over the years. Think about Deontay Wilder, and I ask myself a question. Even if he has elite-level power, even if he is the strongest puncher that this division has to offer, not saying that he is or isn't so much as, what if he were? If he were. Does that alone, does that make him an elite-level fighter? Would you describe a one-handed fighter as being elite level?
Would you?
Deontay Wilder was quite comfortable when he made those statements about not needing skill because of the power that he possesses. And even though he hasn't said it himself, it does appear like he's changed his stance on that. I mean,
Look at all the stuff he's doing with Malik Scotch.
it's almost like Malik is trying to turn him into a different fighter. Why would he need to turn him into a different fighter if Tyson Fury cheated? I mean, that's the only reason he won, right? Because you were drugged, and Kenny Bayless was against you, and so was Mark Breland, and Tyson Fury had anvils in his gloves. Why would you need to change anything about your implementation if the only reason you lost was because he cheated?
Mister, I don't need skill because I got power.
Just don't know. There's a genuine question in there as far as, could a one-handed fighter still be classified as being elite level with such a thin resume and such limited abilities as far as the boxing?
It's a real question. Is Deontay elite?
What does this mean?